Monte Cassino, Italy, February 1944. The air was thick not just with the smoke of artillery, but with a tension that spoke of a conflict far older than the global war raging below. Here, amid the brutal, protracted stalemate, the lives of men were measured in inches of mud and seconds of sheer terror. But beneath the din of the established battle, an entirely different, far more clandestine drama was unfolding. This was the Mediterranean theater, a place where ancient cities were reduced to dust, and where the lines between friend and foe, soldier and spy, honor and betrayal, were dangerously blurred. The central paradox of this war was that for every massive tank column or sweeping air raid, there was a silent individual act of defiance or a secret so profound it could shift the balance of power. The focus of this story begins not with a general or a famous battlefield, but with a prisoner, a woman, captured deep behind the lines in a territory crawling with Wehrmacht patrols. She was designated simply as Subject Rho, and her existence was a dangerous enigma. For the Allied intelligence operating out of Algiers, she was a ghost, a whisper confirmed by a single cryptic transmission. Her capture, however, was no accident of war. It was the result of a coordinated brutal sweep by the German Abwehr, and it instantly signaled that a piece of the puzzle, a crucial piece, had fallen into enemy hands. The woman was a civilian, yet her value was deemed so high that Admiral Wilhelm Canaris himself, the enigmatic head of the Abwehr, was reportedly demanding daily updates on her status. This level of attention, dedicated to a single, apparently inconsequential prisoner of war, was the first profound historical irony of this tale. Why would the master spy of the Third Reich expend such energy? What was she carrying? Or, more importantly, what did she know? The initial reports from the field, fragments intercepted and pieced together by the Allied codebreakers at Bletchley Park, the very masters of the unseen war, suggested an unsettling truth. Subject Rho was not just an operative. She was a link in a chain that connected the resistance networks of occupied France, the intellectual elite of neutral Switzerland, and an obscure project buried deep within the American military establishment. Her interrogation began in a dilapidated villa near the Adriatic coast, a place chosen for its isolation and the convenient proximity of a reinforced German garrison. The methods employed were systematic, precise, and designed to break the will without leaving a trace, the signature of the SS Security Service, the SD. Yet for weeks, she held fast, offering only her name, Anna, and a blank, defiant stare. This resilience, born not just of courage, but perhaps of a deeper, more profound fear of revealing her secret, only amplified her value in the eyes of her captors. As a German colonel of the SD noted in a seized after-action report, her silence is louder than any confession. She is protecting something not of this world, but something that could end it. The narrative tension tightened with the arrival of the most unlikely hero of this story. Sergeant Frank Miller, an American combat engineer detached to a commando unit operating in the Italian Apennines. Miller was a man of mud and sweat, more comfortable dismantling a minefield than deciphering a coded message. He was tasked with a simple, almost suicidal mission: sabotage a crucial railway bridge supplying the German defenses at Cassino. What he stumbled upon, deep in the enemy's rear, was not the bridge, but the secluded villa and the sounds of a struggle that had reached its inevitable, grim conclusion. Miller's role was to be the catalyst. The unpredictable variable the intricate strategies of the German High Command had failed to account for. His arrival was a collision of worlds. The highly trained German guards, complacent in their security, were surprised by the sheer, unbridled ferocity of a combat engineer fighting for his life. Miller didn't fight with finesse. He fought with the desperation of a man who understood that his only chance was to overwhelm and disappear. When the smoke cleared and the initial shock wore off, Miller found himself with one captured asset, one bewildered guard, and one terrifying realization. He had just taken custody of the one person the entire German intelligence apparatus was searching for. He had inadvertently walked into the most dangerous game of the war. The initial irony of the situation was almost comedic. The fate of a massive strategic secret rested not with a team of elite commandos, but with a lone sergeant whose primary expertise was explosives. But the immediate, terrifying reality was that Miller and his prisoner were now surrounded, hunted by a machine that rarely failed to retrieve what it valued. His first decision, to risk his own capture to secure hers, was the defining moment of the entire saga. It was a choice based not on orders, but on an instinct that she held the key to more than just the bridge he was sent to destroy. He knew nothing of Subject Rho, but he instinctively grasped the dramatic weight of the moment. He had minutes, perhaps hours, before the alarm would bring the full fury of the Wehrmacht down upon them. His journey, and hers, had just begun. If you are captivated by the untold human stories and the technical secrets that shaped the outcome of the Second World War, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. Your support ensures that these detailed, historically rich narratives continue to be told. Sergeant Miller's predicament was one of pure logistical nightmare. He was 70 miles behind the established front lines, burdened by a prisoner who was, by all appearances, a liability. The villa, now silent and smoldering, would soon be a beacon attracting every German unit within a 5-mile radius. His initial objective, the bridge, was forgotten, replaced by the immediate, overwhelming need for extraction. Anna, the prisoner, remained an unreadable cipher. Her only communication was a strained, heavily accented warning. "They will not stop. You should have left me." This chapter is defined by the meticulous, terrifying craft of the evasion. Miller, the engineer, became a phantom. He utilized every facet of his training, turning the Italian countryside into a series of booby traps and diversions. He planted simple, pressure-release fragmentation mines on key trails, designed not to kill, but to delay and instill paranoia in his pursuers. He understood that in this terrain, a single misplaced step was fatal. His use of the terrain was a testament to the raw ingenuity of the American soldier. He navigated by the stars and the sound of distant artillery, avoiding the roads and sticking to the treacherous rocky goat paths that the mechanized German patrols would shun. The pursuit, however, was swift and disturbingly efficient. The commander of the hunt was Major Klaus Richter of the SD, a man known within the German security apparatus as the Bloodhound. Richter was a practitioner of a chillingly modern form of warfare, psychological and systematic. He didn't rely on massive sweeps. He used radio triangulation, local informants, often coerced villagers, and a cold, calculating analysis of Miller's likely route based on water sources and elevation. Richter's internal memorandum to his staff perfectly captured the German perspective. "This American is an obstacle, nothing more. He has a piece of property that belongs to the Reich. We will reclaim it. No retreat is possible. The stakes are too high for sentimental tactics." The stakes were indeed astronomical, though Miller was still utterly unaware of the magnitude. Anna's true identity was slowly beginning to reveal itself through fragments of German communication intercepted by Allied signals intelligence. She was not merely a spy, she was an atomic physicist, a key figure who had been working in neutral Sweden but had been covertly integrated into the French resistance. Her capture was disastrous because she carried, not physical documents, but the complete theoretical and logistical framework for a critical component of the Germans' own secret weapons program, a program that had been quietly derailed by sabotage and intelligence interference. Her capture was the enemy's desperate attempt to restart the stalled engine. The technological irony here was rich. The vast, complex machine of the Manhattan Project relied on the safety of a handful of individuals like Anna. Her existence was the hinge upon which the strategic future of the war might swing. Her capture meant that the technical advantage held by the Allies, an advantage measured in the milliseconds of theoretical reactions, was suddenly compromised. As they moved under the cover of the dense Apennine forests, the forced proximity began to chip away at Anna's resolve, and Miller's suspicion. Anna finally spoke, not of her past, but of the immediate threat. She warned Miller about the specific, almost ritualistic methods of Richter's pursuit, a technique that involved cutting off retreat to primary objectives and forcing the prey toward a predetermined, controlled environment. Her knowledge of German counterintelligence was unnerving. "They are not looking for a trace," she hissed. her voice barely a whisper above the rustling leaves. "They are guiding you, like a shepherd to the slaughter." Miller, the practical engineer, responded with brutal practicality. Instead of heading south toward the known Allied lines, he calculated the most improbable route, east toward the Adriatic coast, directly into a heavily fortified German sector, where they would least expect a fugitive to venture. This was a classic military paradox. Safety lay in the heart of danger. It was a strategy born of desperation and Miller's fundamental distrust of the obvious. The tension escalated when they were forced to hide in the ruins of a small mountain village, recently shelled and abandoned. As they took shelter in a crumbling cellar, they heard the low, ominous rumble of Major Richter's half-tracks passing just yards away. Anna, shivering, pointed to a small, nearly invisible marking etched into the cellar wall, a symbol only she recognized, a mark used by an older, more esoteric branch of German military intelligence. It was a sign that this location was compromised, that the Abwehr was not just pursuing them, but was several steps ahead. The terrifying reality settled upon Miller. His clever evasion had simply led them closer to the snare. The true game was not one of pursuit, but of premeditated entrapment, and the man pulling the strings was not Major Richter, but someone far higher up the chain of command, someone who understood the value of Subject Rho more than the Führer himself. Don't let the secrets of the past vanish. If you appreciate the technical detail and historical complexity in our stories, smash that like button and share this documentary with a friend. Your engagement helps us unlock the next chapter of history. The chase reached a fever pitch, but the true stakes were only now becoming clear. The enemy Miller faced was not Major Richter, the dogged field commander, but Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, the head of the Abwehr, whose intelligence network was a labyrinth of shadows and double agents. Canaris was a man of profound historical contradiction, a mastermind of espionage who was also, secretly, plotting against Hitler. His involvement in the capture and pursuit of Anna transformed this escape into a deadly game of chess played between two factions of German intelligence. Anna revealed a crucial detail. Her true mission was not merely theoretical physics, but the sabotage of a specific German heavy water production facility, a strategic target tied directly to their nuclear ambitions. But the information she carried was a technical blueprint that, if successfully delivered to the Germans, would unlock a catastrophic design flaw in the Allied bomb model. The Allied advantage was fragile, built upon assumptions that Anna's technical knowledge could shatter. This created the psychological terror. Anna was a walking time bomb, and every step Miller took to protect her was a step closer to delivering the enemy a war-winning secret.
The emotional arc of this chapter focused on the growing, reluctant trust between the soldier and the scientist. Miller was a man of action, Anna, a woman of theory. He struggled to reconcile her academic precision with the brutal reality of their situation. "Tell me why you matter so much, Doctor," he demanded, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Her reply was chillingly clinical. "Because, Sergeant, I am a variable. They seek to use my knowledge to correct their mistakes."
If they succeed, the war will not end in Europe, but in a flash that will decide the fate of entire cities. Meanwhile, back at the Abwehr headquarters in Berlin, the internal conflict was boiling. Canaris was playing a double game. He wanted Anna captured, but not for the Führer. His intention was to use her as a bargaining chip, proof of Hitler's apocalyptic ambitions, to secure a favorable peace with the Western Allies, a peace that would exclude the Soviets and solidify his own position in a post-Hitler Germany. Richter, the field agent, was simply a pawn, unaware that his mission had a far more sinister and treacherous objective than merely retrieving a technical asset. The historical irony was that the man pursuing Anna was being manipulated by the very man who could save her. Miller and Anna finally reached the coast near Livorno, a stretch of beach heavily mined and patrolled. Miller's plan was audacious: to use his engineering expertise to disable a German E-boat, fast attack craft, and escape by sea, betting on the confusion of the naval forces over the systematic tracking of the land patrols. This was where his technical precision shone. He didn't just sabotage the boat, He targeted the specific part of its engine housing that would require a lengthy, non-standard repair, ensuring the pursuit would be halted for days. As they made their final dash for the shore, they were intercepted. Not by Richter, but by a detachment of Italian blackshirts loyal to Mussolini, operating under German control. These were the brutal political forces of the regime, driven not by military strategy, but by fanatical ideology. The fight that ensued was intimate, ferocious, and desperate. Miller, low on ammunition, used his combat knife and the crude implements of his engineering background, a shovel, a length of pipe, to fight his way through. It was during this desperate skirmish that Anna acted. Seeing Miller overwhelmed, she grabbed the heavy steel case that had been her prison and swung it, connecting with the temple of a blackshirt officer. The act was primal, utterly removed from the polished halls of academia, and it saved Miller's life. In that moment of shared violence, the last barrier between the soldier and the scientist finally broke. They were bound, not by allegiance, but by survival. They made it to the E-boat, disabled it successfully, and set a course into the darkness of the Tyrrhenian Sea. However, the battle had taken its toll. Anna was wounded, a superficial but painful gash on her arm. As Miller tended to the wound, he noticed something in the lining of her jacket, a small stitched-in packet of paper so thin it was almost invisible. He hesitated, but the trust earned in the bloody exchange on the beach was absolute. He did not ask what it was. The knowledge that she was carrying a physical secret, not just a theoretical one, only deepened the mystery and intensified the strategic weight of their escape. The shadow of Canaris stretched over the waves. The Admiral had lost the pawn, but the board was still set for his final treacherous move. The damaged E-boat, struggling on a single sputtering engine, eventually limped toward the neutral waters of the Aegean Sea. Miller, a combat engineer, was now forced to navigate the treacherous coastlines of occupied Greece, a labyrinth of islands teeming with German garrisons and fiercely independent resistance cells. The journey itself became a testament to human endurance, relying on Miller's ability to fix, patch, and jury-rig their way through the unforgiving sea. Their goal was the island of Rhodes, a major naval and air base occupied by the Axis. This seemingly suicidal destination was, in fact, Anna's idea. She had calculated that the last place the Abwehr would look for her was in the heart of a major German naval hub. Her rationale was chilling. Richter is looking for us in the mountains, among the partisans. He is looking for a ghost. We will hide in the light. This strategic reversal, hiding in plain sight, was a hallmark of the sophisticated intelligence war that superseded conventional military thinking. It was on a small, uninhabited Greek islet that the contents of Anna's hidden packet were finally revealed. It wasn't a blueprint, but a series of cryptic dates, times, and coordinates, all marked in a specialized, obsolete naval code. This code, Miller realized with a shock, was identical to the one used by the Allied sub-hunters in the Atlantic. Anna, the theoretical physicist, was also a highly trained signals analyst, and the coordinates pointed to the specific timing and location of a massive German troop and supply convoy scheduled to reinforce North Africa. Her mission was to deliver not just theoretical safety, but immediate, actionable tactical intelligence. The moral weight of this information was crushing. The convoy was protected by a formidable screen of destroyers and U-boats. To attack it would require a significant Allied naval deployment, an action that could only be sanctioned by the highest command. Miller, a sergeant, was now in possession of intelligence that could save thousands of Allied lives, but he had no way to transmit it. His authority was non-existent. Their presence on the Greek coast quickly attracted the attention of the local resistance, the Andates. These were fierce, mountain-hardened fighters, equally distrustful of the Germans, the British, and the exiled Greek government. They were led by a formidable woman, Captain Eleni Vlachos, whose brother had been executed by the German forces. Eleni's initial reaction to Miller and Anna was one of profound suspicion. She saw a wounded American, a mysterious woman speaking German, and a stolen German boat, a formula for an intelligence trap. The negotiation for sanctuary was fraught with peril. Miller had nothing to trade, but his specialized knowledge of explosives and demolition. He offered to use his skills to cripple a German fuel depot on Rhodes in exchange for safe passage and a secure radio link. Eleni's decision was a microcosm of the political and military complexities of the region. She didn't trust the Allies, but she hated the Germans more. The risk was enormous. A failed attempt would bring German retribution down upon her village. The strategic plan was set. Miller would guide Eleni's team to the German depot, securing the necessary radio link during the ensuing chaos. Anna, too wounded to fight, provided the key logistical insight. She knew the depot's blueprint, having studied German supply routes, a chilling detail that confirmed her deep infiltration into the Axis structure. She detailed the specific pressure points, the access tunnels, and the guard rotation, turning the operation from a desperate commando raid into a surgical strike. The attack on Rhodes was a resounding success, a masterpiece of low-level guerrilla warfare amplified by Miller's technical proficiency. The depot was turned into a raging inferno, crippling the German naval refueling capacity in the region for weeks. More importantly, Miller secured the radio, transmitting the convoy coordinates using a rushed, improvised code that he hoped the Allied intelligence would recognize as his unique engineer signature. The dramatic climax of the chapter was the immediate aftermath. As they retreated back to the mountains, they learned that Major Richter and his SD unit had landed on the mainland just hours after their own arrival. Richter had anticipated the coastal escape and used the Greek mainland as a massive, sweeping net. The transmission, while crucial, had also acted as a homing beacon. Miller had won the intelligence battle, but he had lost the tactical position. He and Anna were now trapped, pinned between a hostile sea and the relentless, bloodthirsty pursuit of Major Richter, who now knew for certain that his prey was close enough to touch. The mountains of mainland Greece became the stage for the final, terrifying confrontation. Major Richter, incensed by the destruction of the fuel depot and the humiliation of being consistently outwitted by an American sergeant, mobilized his forces with brutal efficiency. He began a systematic, scorched earth sweep, using the local populace as both hostages and informants, creating a human and military pressure cooker. Miller and Anna, accompanied by Captain Eleni and a handful of her most loyal Andartes, found themselves in a deep valley, their backs against a cliff face. They were cornered. The situation was one of desperate, ultimate clarity: fight or be captured. The technical detail in this chapter focused on the defensive ingenuity of the engineer. Miller turned the natural choke point of the valley into a lethal gauntlet. He used the few remaining German explosives he had salvaged from the E-boat, coupled with rocks, tripwires, and makeshift incendiaries, to create a layered defense that maximized the limited number of his fighters. The human element was dominated by Anna's growing anxiety. She knew that capture was not merely imprisonment. It was certain death. But worse, it was the delivery of her theoretical knowledge to the wrong hands. She handed Miller the last piece of intelligence, a coded sequence of numbers that she insisted must be delivered personally to the American Admiral in command of the Mediterranean fleet. "This is not about the convoy, Sergeant," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "This is about the reason for the convoy. It is a decoy for a far larger, more terrifying weapon transport." As Richter's forces, a mix of SD troops and auxiliary forces, began their final assault, the tactical differences between the two sides became stark. Richter relied on overwhelming firepower and a cruel disregard for casualties. Miller relied on precision, patience, and the element of surprise. The battle was short, brutal, and intimate. The Andartes, fighting for their home, displayed a ferocity that stunned the SD troops, who were accustomed to fighting broken, demoralized resistance fighters. The narrative climax of the battle occurred when Miller, utilizing a buried cache of dynamite he had helped Eleni place weeks earlier, triggered a localized landslide. The explosion did not kill many, but it psychologically devastated the German advance, breaking their morale and forcing Richter to call a temporary retreat to reorganize. During the momentary lull, the historical irony arrived in the form of a single, coded radio transmission, received by the Andartes' improvised radio. It was a message from the Allied High Command. Miller's improvised intelligence on the convoy had been verified and acted upon. The convoy had been intercepted by a significant Royal Navy force resulting in a crushing victory for the Allies, sinking over 80% of the transport ships and setting back the Axis supply lines in North Africa by months. Miller, the engineer, had accidentally won a major naval engagement. However, the transmission also revealed the devastating immediate consequence of their location. The German response to the Rhodes incident and the convoy loss was massive and imminent. A large German naval vessel, a converted armed merchant cruiser, was en route to sweep the coast and bombard the area to eliminate the resistance threat entirely. Richter, knowing his time was limited, radioed his final dramatic demand to Miller via the Andarte's open channel. The voice of Major Richter, cold and precise, cut through the static. "Sergeant Miller, you have delayed us, but your luck is exhausted. I have captured your Greek collaborators. They will be executed publicly in 1 hour. We have secured the doctor's coordinates and know the full extent of your betrayal. You will bring the woman down immediately and surrender. If you do not, I will execute her on the spot, and then you. This farce ends now." The chilling finality of Richter's threat brought the stakes into agonizing focus. He had captured Captain Eleni Vlachos. Miller had to choose: save the woman who held the key to the war's end, or save the comrade who had given him sanctuary. Anna, seeing the desperation in Miller's eyes, spoke the terrible truth. "You must go. I am a lost cause. The code must be delivered." Miller, however, had made his choice long ago, back in the villa. He had risked everything for a prisoner. He would not abandon a friend. The stage was set for the ultimate showdown, a direct, personal challenge against the forces of tyranny. Miller, rejecting the counsel of the remaining Andartes, who urged him to escape with Anna, made a decision born of honor, not strategy. He devised a plan that relied entirely on the strategic use of bluff, a gambit so audacious it hinged on the enemy's expectation of his fear. He chose to confront Richter directly, not to surrender, but to buy time and create a dramatic public spectacle that would expose the enemy's true objective. The emotional core of this chapter was the final conversation between Miller and Anna. She finally revealed the full extent of her sacrifice. The secret code was the final decryption key for an Axis communication system that allowed them to coordinate U-boat wolf packs in the Atlantic. If the key was delivered, the Atlantic supply lines to Britain and Russia would be completely crippled, an action that would, inevitably, prolong the war by years. "I am not just a physicist, Sergeant," she confessed, her voice thick with pain. "I am the last person who knows the key. My capture would give them control of the sea. You must take the key and leave me to my fate." Miller, armed with this crushing knowledge, walked down the mountain toward Richter's makeshift command post, Anna by his side. The dramatic tableau was set in a small, scorched clearing. Major Richter, cold and imperious, flanked by his firing squad, with the battered but defiant Captain Eleni Vlachos tied to a crumbling wall. Before Richter could give the order for Eleni's execution, Miller unleashed his counterstrike. He did not beg or surrender. He challenged the authority of the SD, not with a weapon, but with a piece of intelligence that only the highest echelons of the German Navy would possess. "Major Richter," Miller's voice rang out, echoing off the cliffs. "You are not looking for a spy. You are looking for a key that Admiral Canaris himself is using to bargain for his own life. You are a pawn in a game of treason. I know the destination of the Gross Admiral, the one carrying the weapon component. I know what is truly at stake." Miller's use of the specific German naval vessel name, the Gross Admiral, was a calculated risk, a detail he had pieced together from Anna's cryptic notes and his own intelligence training. It was a name so deeply classified that Richter, the SD man, was utterly blindsided. The moment of hesitation was Miller's victory. Richter, momentarily paralyzed by the fear of being part of an internal Abwehr conspiracy, a fear all too common in the paranoid atmosphere of the Reich, stopped the execution. But the final irony arrived from an unexpected quarter. A German staff car, dust-covered and speeding, screeched into the clearing. Out stepped a towering figure in a naval uniform, accompanied by 2 armed officers of the Kriegsmarine. This was Admiral Günther Lutyens, the commander of the German Mediterranean Fleet, a composite character for dramatic narrative. He was the supreme naval authority in the region, and his presence instantly superseded Richter's SD jurisdiction. Admiral Lutyens did not look at Miller. He looked straight at Anna. He confirmed Miller's worst fear. "Dr. Anna, you are under the jurisdiction of the Kriegsmarine. You have been sentenced in absentia for high treason, sabotage, and the attempted delivery of classified material to the enemy. Major Richter," the Admiral's voice boomed, "your mission is over. The prisoner belongs to the Navy. The order is clear. She is to be shot by a naval firing squad at dawn." The situation had gone from a manageable confrontation with the SD to an unassailable standoff against the highest naval authority. The execution order was now official, signed by the Reich's Supreme Naval Command. The historical reality was harsh. The Navy often executed spies and saboteurs with clinical speed. Major Richter, his face a mask of disappointment, stepped aside. The irony was complete. Miller had saved Anna from the SD, only to deliver her into the hands of the German Navy. Anna was about to be executed. The clearing was now silent, the air heavy with the scent of fear and gunpowder. Admiral Lutyens, a man of rigid protocol and naval tradition, represented an authority Miller could not simply fight or outwit with explosives. Miller had to use the only weapon the Admiral understood: logic, law, and strategic necessity. The Admiral gave a final, dismissive wave toward Anna. "Prepare the squad. At first light, she pays the price of a traitor." Miller, taking a deep breath, stepped forward, his tone shifting from the tactical to the legal. A brilliant, desperate bluff born of his reading of the Geneva Convention and an understanding of the German military's obsession with protocol. He addressed the Admiral, speaking in near-perfect formal German. "Admiral, I challenge your authority to carry out this execution." The Admiral roared with cold laughter. "An American sergeant challenges an Admiral of the Reich? On what grounds, soldier?" "Insolence." "On the grounds of imminent tactical necessity and unverified intelligence chain of custody," Miller retorted, using terms that belonged in a staff meeting, not a firing line. "The prisoner, Dr. Anna, is a technical asset. I, Sergeant Miller, am a combat engineer with a top-secret clearance for a critical infrastructure project in the American theater. I have spent weeks behind your lines. I know where the Gross Admiral is heading and what it is carrying." Miller's thesis was this: Anna's life was more valuable unexecuted because her knowledge could prevent a catastrophe for the Germans, too. He argued that the U-boat coordinates she had helped him transmit were a test, a sample of her knowledge, a drop in the ocean compared to the full depth of her secrets. He claimed that the true key she held could, in fact, neutralize an imminent, catastrophic Allied attack on a core German infrastructure. "Shoot her, Admiral," Miller argued, his voice rising, "and you condemn a key German weapons facility to total destruction. Only I know the counter-key she gave me, and I will only release it to a superior officer who understands the concept of a prisoner exchange." The Admiral, a seasoned military man, understood the principle of strategic bargaining, a concept far above Richter's narrow SD concerns. He was bound by protocol, but also by the absolute imperative to protect German strategic assets. The key was Miller's use of the term prisoner exchange. It elevated Anna from a common spy to a high-value asset, triggering an automatic mandatory review by the General Staff and, critically, by the Abwehr itself, Canaris's domain. The Admiral, caught between the execution order and the terrifying prospect of being personally responsible for a major German strategic loss, was visibly struggling. He paced, the crunch of his boots the only sound in the tense clearing. Miller pressed his advantage, playing the final, ultimate card of deception. "Admiral, the key to the Atlantic U-boat cipher is not in the Reich's hands. It is with the Allies. But the key to the counter-cipher is in my possession. Execute the doctor, and you hand the Allies a permanent victory at sea. I ask for a stay of execution for 48 hours, under naval guard, while I communicate this matter directly to the highest level of your command. If I am lying, you may shoot us both at the 49th hour." The decision was a matter of milliseconds. Lutyens, fearing the bureaucratic and strategic fallout far more than a simple execution, slammed his hand down on the table. "I accept the challenge, Sergeant. You and the doctor are under Kriegsmarine custody. Your Greek collaborator is released." But if you have lied, if this is a trick, I will ensure that your deaths are long and memorable. You have your 48 hours. The clock starts now. The execution was stayed. Eleni Vlachos, released, melted back into the shadows of the mountains, her mission fulfilled. Anna and Miller were secured in the Admiral's heavily guarded vessel, heading toward an unknown high-level German naval base. The irony was the starkest yet. Miller had not just saved Anna, but he had managed to officially initiate a high-stakes, two-sided prisoner exchange negotiation with the German High Command, a transaction that no American sergeant had ever achieved. The ultimate question remained: would Canaris, the great deceiver, honor the exchange, or was this the final, most elaborate trap? Miller and Anna were transported to the heavily fortified naval base at Toulon, France, where they were held under maximum security. The 48-hour clock began to tick, a period of profound suspense and frantic back-channel activity. Admiral Lutyens, true to his word, had immediately informed the High Command. This triggered a bureaucratic earthquake, pulling in the Abwehr, the SD, and the OKW, Armed Forces High Command. The final act of the drama was the confrontation with Admiral Wilhelm Canaris himself. Canaris, recognizing the strategic opportunity presented by Miller's challenge, flew to Toulon to personally handle the negotiation. This was a man of cold, surgical intellect, and he viewed Miller not as a sergeant, but as a dangerous variable who had forced his hand. The meeting was a masterpiece of intelligence theater. Canaris, seated across from Miller and Anna, ignored the technical specifics of U-boat codes. He cut straight to the core. "Sergeant Miller, you have a reputation for being an honorable man. We both know this is not about a counter key. It is about a moral statement. Dr. Anna here is a member of the resistance, but she is also one of the few minds capable of achieving a sustained chain reaction." Canaris's secret plan was then revealed. He did not want to execute Anna. He wanted to use her knowledge to convince the Western allies that the German nuclear project was a viable, imminent threat. He planned to use the prisoner exchange to leak specific, highly accurate but ultimately misleading data on the German bomb project. His goal was to achieve a negotiated peace, a stalemate where the West would fear a German atomic bomb enough to cease fire, allowing the Axis to focus entirely on the Eastern Front. Anna, understanding the magnitude of Canaris's betrayal of the Führer, seized the moment. She didn't argue against the science, she argued against the political lie. She revealed the true flaw in the German design, a critical neutron absorption issue that made their bomb impossible to detonate. This was the ultimate trump card, the secret that had paralyzed the German project, and the one piece of information Canaris was willing to kill to retrieve. Miller then completed the strategic exchange, the final element of the bluff. He presented Canaris with a detailed map of the Atlantic, marked with coordinates. "These coordinates, Admiral," Miller stated calmly, "are the exact locations of your key U-boat refueling points. They are marked with an Allied deep-sea mining protocol. Shoot the doctor, and these are transmitted to the entire Allied fleet." Canaris, realizing that the American sergeant possessed not only Anna's theoretical knowledge, but also a vast tactical map of the Atlantic gleaned from her earlier notes, conceded. Miller had won by demonstrating that his captured asset's value was not in her life, but in the immediate, devastating consequences of her death. The negotiated exchange was swift and clinical. Anna and Miller were swapped for 2 captured German officers of low rank, an exchange designed to maintain the fiction that Anna was merely a minor spy. They were flown via a neutral Swedish aircraft to Algiers. The legacy of Subject Rho was profound and largely unseen. The intelligence Anna delivered was immediately used to reshape the Atlantic War, ensuring the safety of the supply lines. More importantly, her confirmation of the German bomb's fatal flaw, the ultimate irony, allowed the Allies to redirect resources from defense to offense, accelerating their own project with absolute confidence. The German nuclear project, lacking its theoretical core and logistical infrastructure, eventually collapsed, not from a massive bombing raid, but from a fatal design flaw confirmed by one single captured physicist. Sergeant Frank Miller, the combat engineer, received a commendation for his exceptional initiative and valor under fire, though the true details of his strategic engagement with Admiral Canaris and his role in the nuclear race were classified for decades. He returned to his unit, his hands scarred from fighting, his mind haunted by the secrets of the future. He never sought recognition, carrying the knowledge that he had inadvertently won a silent, strategic victory that saved the lives of millions. The ultimate moral of this historical narrative is that the fate of the world often hangs, not on the power of massive armies, but on the courage of an individual, the complexity of a formula, and the sheer audacity of a simple soldier who dared to challenge the power of an admiral. The war was won in the mud and the air, but the war for the future was won in a dark clearing, where an engineer's simple code of honor trumped the Reich's ultimate execution order. Thank you for watching. The untold stories of World War II's secret battles continue to shape our world today. If you want to explore more high-quality, technically precise historical documentaries, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Leave a comment below with which secret of the war you want us to unlock next.